After 5 hours of traveling, we finally made it to Chicago. We made it to the second city. I just parked, and the only thing is appropriate. I need energy! Anyways, before we go in, there we go. Did you hear that? Now I'm ready for class. But we still have about 22 minutes left to go, and something I like to do, especially since I write down these notes. I mean, this whole channel, my whole podcast of actors' notes is simply the notes that I write down in class, in acting class, in improv class, any type of class that is progressing my acting career. And these are thoughts and questions and feelings that I have, either that I asked or that I felt, that I wrote down. And I'm doing this and sharing it with you guys. It was mainly for me, but I'm sharing it with you because I've noticed that a lot of these things, I've noticed so many other actors, or it doesn't have to be in TV and film, it could be in theater, and sometimes just in life. Sometimes it's just a confidence issue that I'm facing during scene work. And I noticed that it is common in a lot of people. So I feel like sharing these notes might just help someone feel seen. And something that I like to do before this 3-hour improv class that really just feels like 45 minutes is refresh on the weeks before. Now, this is week 3, so we're about to learn something new in class, but the past 2 weeks is something that I can refresh my mind on. And something that we did last week was how you don't always have to make the scene about what you're doing, because it's good to establish the relationship of who you are to the other person and your relationship. If it's a mother, brother, astronaut, and you're SpaceX or whoever's the space control, developing the relationship right off the bat is important. Establishing who you are and where you are physically. That's what I'm getting to with this note. Where you are physically. Are you on a spaceship? So you should be miming. That's what I love about improv. You have to actually physically mime. When it comes to actual scenes and acting in other classes, my acting coach, who I take regular classes with, she says, never mime, never pantomime. Like during self-tapes, you might hear this. But in improv, I actually have to build and use my creativity and mime, and I love that concept. So you have to mime the scene. And then the last question I ask is, what do you want? Are you trying to solve a problem? Usually that's the case. What are you guys trying to solve when you discover? You don't have to always solve a problem, but it does progress the scene. There are different tactics to never blank, and I've blanked many times during scenes, but just trusting the support of your other player and discovering and allowing yourself to discover the scene and bring it to life. That's what makes an interesting improv scene. But the main thing that I learned last week was not always making the scene about what you're doing. So like I said, if you're on a spaceship and all you're ever doing is talking about the spaceship, maybe you're with another astronaut and that's your scene partner, and you're just always talking about the spaceship. Yeah, it's an improv scene, but you have a whole other scene partner there. How do you feel about them? Do you hate them? Do you feel like you love them and you've never confessed your love before and it's just the only two of you? Now you're in space, now you might have to only confess your love. There's so many ways you can go about a scene other than just talking about the scene. The second note I wrote was, when you're having trouble with a scene, like I said, okay, here's a tactic. Here are 2 things that I kind of just touched on. One thing I touched on, and another way, it's a tactic to, if you blank, and if you feel like the scene is not going anywhere, maybe you are just talking about the scene, it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere, then having something prudent, like telling the other astronaut that's also the love of your life, confessing your love to them, that's important. So having something so important, say something that you've built up for months to share with your lover, with your friend, with your coworker, with your boss, whatever the scene's about that you've established this relationship with, what's just something so important? Like, Mom, I got expelled. Or, Dad, I'm sorry, I ran the dog over. Just something, right? The other one is having a problem to solve. So what issue are you trying to solve? Maybe if it's I'm just going to go back to the spaceship. Maybe there are asteroids coming. Yes, make sure you're not just only talking about the spaceship, but now you're involving these asteroids, but also bring your scene partner into here, or your astronaut, or whoever you're with. Maybe you're with Yoda. I don't know. That's the beauty of what this improv scene can become. It can become anything, but making sure that there's a problem to solve, or sorry, you don't have to make sure that there's a problem to solve. Just having one to solve progresses the scene. Last but not least, before we head out, I'm excited. I'm excited to share with what you guys, like I'm telling you guys what I learned in the previous weeks, but now I get to share with you later what I'm going to learn after class. The last thing is have stakes and then break them. So what I mean by this is that when you're performing in front of an audience, whether it's an entire crowd or just one person, I think one of the beautiful things about improv when it comes to comedy is that improv is not comedy. Improv is its own weird, special art, just like any other creative is. And yeah, it is funny, but what about improv that makes it so funny? It's just the truth. It's just so odd for someone to always say yes and to someone else's suggestion and continue building something from there. And it's just like, it's so unique to see a different outcome that human beings don't usually see. So take a case of a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and they're going through a breakup. You know, in real life, you know, we've all done this. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but it's hard. It's difficult to get these words out. But an improv scene, you're always saying yes and. So if this scene's gonna be about a breakup, the boyfriend's gonna be like, I'm breaking up with you because you're ugly. You have stakes. The stakes are you're breaking up with your girlfriend, but you just call her ugly. The audience is like, oh shit. You have stakes and then break them. So it's just like, it's like reflecting real life, but seeing what actually happens if we make those choices of just being so truthful. And that is comedy. I'm gonna leave you with that. There's so many other notes that I wrote. This is just week 2, because I remember week 1 of Improv for Actors 2, that's the class, Improv for Actors 2, week 1, we only did physical things. We never sat down for me to write notes. So last week I had to think about what I learned after class, wrote it down, which I'm gonna do after this. After class, I'm gonna sit down, write down 3 important notes, and then share with you guys what I learned. The first week, I couldn't do that. It was a learning lesson, so I had to adapt. And that, if you're gonna take anything away from right now, is how well can you adapt? Not just as an actor, as an improviser, as a human being. Because how well you can adapt, oh, shoot, that'll help you a ton. Okay, we just finished what I feel like is my hardest improv class that I've ever had to do out of the 15 weeks I've been here. And I'm smiling because it was fun. But I say that it's hard because without knowing, and I don't even think my instructor knew this, or maybe he did and just didn't tell us, but we did musical improv, which I don't sing. I don't sing. It's hard for me to do rhymes and stay on tempo. I mean, I did band growing up as a kid. I played the saxophone, but it's something that you have to continually train, and I just feel like I lost tempo. I'm half Filipino, half Russian, and that Filipino in me, he's not a singer. No, I mean, he's an actor, but he's not a singer. So when my instructor said, all right, we have a new instructor just for this first half, because it's a 3-hour improv class here at the Second City in Chicago, and I drive 5 hours to get here. But truthfully, just being in class, even though this was my hardest class, it still feels like 45 minutes, because when you're up there and having fun and allowing yourself to play again and just let your imagination, you have I mean, I was going to say, let your imagination run wild. You still have these rules, the yes and rule, the don't ask questions, establishing who you are to your scene partner, where you are. But with Improv for Actors 1 and Improv for Actors 2, we really dive deep into the relationship. That's what I'm learning right now. So every class will be different in terms of how your instructor will teach, in terms of what class you actually take. Because if you're a beginner improver, that's a new word. You can take Improv 1, which I did. I did Improv 1A and 1B. That's just an option of classes they have here. They have improv for people with anxiety. They have sketch comedy. They have writing classes. They have so many different things for kids. But where I am and the instructor I have here at the Second City, we're diving into the relationship. And something I talked about before we even showed up to class, and I'll get to musical improv here in a second, is just establishing the relationship. Meaning that, okay, you can easily establish that this is a brother-sister or a boss-employee kind of relationship by just saying, hey, boss, or listen, I told you not to show up to work late again, and you're already establishing this, this setting. But emphasize on the name. It's so funny, and we did this it sounds so basic and so simple, but we did this in class. Every time we would start a scene, including myself, we would start it normally, like, doctor, I'm ready for my surgery today. The instructor, he would say, pause or stop us and say, give him a name. I'm like, Dr. Jubilee? And then we'd get like a laugh. And this happens so many times when we give someone a name, because a name makes them human. And yeah, a doctor, you'd always think of everyone as human, but it makes it so realistic in terms of, okay, this is just a scene about life. And then the comedy is just the truth of what happens between a doctor and a patient, and maybe some crazy things that the improvisers will say. And it's more grounded to have a relationship, and it can all start with just the name. And I kind of already talked about relationship in the past videos before, and if you haven't seen them or if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll leave a link in the description down below about the past 2 weeks, because this is already my 3rd week. The past 2 weeks I've been taking Improv for Actors 2, and just what I've been learning. And these are my notes that I've been taking in class. But going back to musical improv, this was, like I said, I don't sing, and I was so nervous. I felt my chest pounding, and it was just, it was uncomfortable. But it definitely stretched my skills as an improviser. And here are some things that I took away, because I wrote down so many different notes about what my instructor said. He brought a piano. He started playing, and we started improvising. We started with some games, but I really wanted to talk about the 3 key takeaways. And the first one is, why is it that a lot of improvisers will start to perform into song or start singing on stage? If you've ever seen an improv show, you've seen them just start singing, and you're like, ooh, improvisers, should they know how to sing? Do I need to be a trained singer to be an improviser? And he said this almost in the beginning of the class, my instructor. He said, and I'm gonna say this verbatim, you don't need to be a trained singer to be in musical improv. You just need to be a great improviser, and it's the same skills as a regular improviser that goes into musical improv. Yes, there's music, there's a tempo, there's a beat. You could rhyme, and those are questions that I asked my instructor. I was like, how do you rhyme? How do you follow a beat? And he's like, and this is one small tip too. He said, yeah. A lot of the times for improv, it's unplanned. You discover the scene as you're doing it. But musical improv, if you don't have, good rhythm, or you feel like you can't follow a tempo of a song, beat of a song, it's good to practice beforehand. So when you're singing, or when you're listening to a song, or even singing a song, just listening to the beat. How would you move to it? And then in the music, he started counting. I did this before in band. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And in terms of following a beat of the song, and then finding that, drop beat, or whatever you call it, and knowing when it hits, and just timing. And then rhyming. Just practice rhyming words. When you say a sentence, try to make the next sentence rhyme, and that is part of the grime. Oh, that hurt. That hurt to say, but it's practice. And it hurt to perform. It hurt to perform because we started singing. We would do 3-line improv scenes, And that means just one person is the initiator. They would say a statement to establish the relationship or where you are, just to start the scene off. And then you do an improv scene. Maybe you're two brothers and you're cutting wood. That's something the instructor would help us by giving us these suggestions. You start the scene off, and then our musical improv teacher, he would say, "Stop, your last line, I want you to sing it." Okay. Like, I did a scene where I was going to prom with this girl, and I think my line was, "Please dance with me," and he said, "I want you to sing it." So he started playing on the piano, and I was trying to find the beat. I was so nervous, and my heart was pounding so much. Before he even played like the next verse, all he did was, push the keyboard and it made a melody. I already started dancing, and then I immediately started to go into a song. And my actual instructor, because he was there, he stopped it and he said, "Gio, here's the second note." He said, "Listen, remind yourself to breathe." It is nerve-wracking to do something different, to take a risk, to be out there and doing something that you don't normally do. But when you're so anxious, it's not like they could see it, but the fact that I started dancing and performing into the song, I didn't allow the scene to breathe, no pun intended. I didn't allow the scene to set the tone. Maybe he was going for a more romantic tone, as I said, "Can you dance with me, please?" Or maybe he was going to go for a more upbeat song, and I didn't wait to listen to the melody to see what kind of song it was to know how to sing. I know I'm rambling here a bit, but there's so much truth into saying, remind yourself to breathe. And I think a lot of the times I've been doing this, the Second City classes, improv classes. I've yelled, I've laid down on the ground and pretended I was a dog. Don't ask me why, it was part of a scene. Some of you are like, "Oh, Gio, I didn't know you were like that." It can be nerve-wracking to perform, to be in front of people, and even great, amazing actors. Like The Odyssey just came out. Tom Holland, Matt Damon, Zendaya, they all talk about this fear of rejection in terms of their performance. Like, did I perform good enough for the director? And that simple technique, reminding yourself to breathe. And I did that quite often. I was loud with it too. I was like, and then I remember I did that because we were about to play a game, an improv game, and there's always, he's always asking either the musical improv instructor or my actual instructor or any instructor. They ask, "All right, we need 2 volunteers." Being a volunteer for anything, that's nerve-wracking. But when you feel yourself getting to that nervous state, just and then just trust your intuition. That's another thing too as well. I cover that in many of my past weeks here, taking Improv for Actors 1, about just trusting your intuition, trusting the first thing that comes to your mind is enough. And that's another thing too about being a good improviser, and I'll get to the last point here, is about not only letting the fear of judgment get to you, but letting the fear of judgment of yourself get to you. Because the reason why I talked about intuition and trusting your intuition, a lot of people have filters when they talk. A lot of people will not speak their mind, because we've always said, think before you speak. Now there's truth to that, and it's so specific to situations. But in improv, speak your mind, say how you feel, even if it's bizarre, because this is one of the most important things I learned as an improviser, that a good improviser will always support, no matter what you say. I don't care if we're talking about dogs. If you start talking about trains and how it's economically terrible for the environment because it's causing more rust than it ever should, and you're like, what? I just want to talk about dogs. It's your job as an improviser to support the other player. And then maybe somehow you can connect dogs on trains. You were like, "Oh yeah, you remember 101 Dalmatians when they got on the train?" I think that's a message that we should adopt some dogs, something like that. You can go so many different places with improv, but a good improviser will always support. And like this, I challenge you right now. I'll share some tea with you later about holding this pretty girl's hand in class today when we were doing a skit. And then she said my breath smelled bad, but it was part of the scene. I wanted to say, oh yeah, I challenge you to do this, that whenever the instructor or whenever a moment occurs when there needs to be a volunteer. I'm speaking specifically for improv class. If you ever come to the Second City or take an improv class, this might be the case where the teacher will say, okay, I need 2 volunteers. These are moments where you're like, I don't know what's going to happen, so I'm not going to take the risk and make a fool of myself if I mess up. And I remember one of the girls I was in the scene with who told me my breath smelled bad. And then I had mouthwash in my backpack, so I took it during halftime. Anyways, she went up when the teacher said, all right, I need a volunteer. She went up, and we could already tell she was nervous about singing because of the games we played before. She just wasn't confident. She was very quiet. She stopped singing midway when the musical improv teacher asked her to, just because she said, I'm just not feeling it right now. So there was already, that tone of she's nervous too. So she volunteered to go up, and then we needed another person to start the scene, and nobody else went up. And so here is the job of a good improviser. Even in that moment, you can still support your fellow ensemble, your fellow player, your fellow scene partner. Where if they're up there and they're alone, a good improviser will say, listen, I know that I don't know what's about to happen. I know that it's risky to go up there. I know that I'm not a good singer. I know that it's difficult for me. But I also know that they're feeling the same way. And I know I need to support them as a good improviser. So after like 10 seconds, to her probably felt like 2 minutes. I know this because I was also in her case where I volunteered and nobody else volunteered with me. Where 10 seconds passed by and I said, you know what? I don't know what's about to happen. I might make a fool of myself, but I'm not going to let my fellow improviser just stand there alone. So I got up and we started doing a scene. My instructor said, okay, you guys are teenagers and it's prom. Begin. And so I went with the nervous type of, the typical nervous setup where the guy is like, oh, hey, I'm ready to take you to prom. Or, my mom's outside. She's ready to take us, but she said she can give us about 10 minutes so we can talk. And she started, she agreed that this is a bit awkward, so she was shy too. And it kind of just progressed into one thing. And then this was the game where we had to sing. And I sang. I didn't sing on beat or on tempo, or maybe I did. I don't know. It's different when you're in the moment performing. But it's not about being right. It was just about, I'm trying to say it's more about confidence. It's more about how you say something, less about what you say. Even if it's right, even if it's not right, even if it's not on tempo. If you say it with confidence, that's what matters the most. I feel like my instructor, and I'll get to the tea here in a second, my instructor probably knew that I was lacking this confidence in singing just because I was a little bit sheepish with my singing. And he said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to stand in the middle of the room in front of everybody. Just stand there and listen to the music. And so I don't know what overcame me, but as I stood there, I just took a hero's pose and I was just like that. And I just stood there for like 20 seconds. It was honestly probably like 5. If you ever perform and there's silence, it could be truthfully 5 seconds, but it feels like a whole hour. And even my teacher said, sometimes silence, you can be active and you can be passive. That's exactly why he had me stand in the middle of the room, and I just chose to take the hero pose. But he said, just listen to the music, don't say a word. After those few seconds went by, he looked at everyone else and he said, how do you guys feel about that? They were like, I feel excited. Some dude in the corner, he's funny. My buddy David, he was like, I feel excited. I feel empowered. All I did was stand there in a hero pose, and that proves that even in silence, you can be active and passive. I don't want to ramble too much because there's so many different thoughts that I learned in class. But I found that so interesting. The musical improv, that is something that I never thought I would do, that maybe you might do. But as an improviser, you accept what life brings and you say yes and you continue on. You take it, regardless of how on tempo, on beat, or how well or not well you can sing. You run with it. So yeah, a good improviser will always support. They never leave a fellow player hanging, and they will always agree to what you say. Now there are cases, like you need to learn the rules in order to break them. It's okay to say no, but still, you will always support. And then we sing when words... Oh, did I even say this one? The first one. We sing because sometimes words aren't enough. Say you're feeling a certain type of way towards your scene partner. Maybe you're very happy, angry, sad, these basic emotions. We've experienced this in our everyday lives when we're so flustered and so consumed with an emotion. We don't have words to say. So a clever and funny thing that improvisers do is just to burst out in song. And it's so interesting because it raises the stakes of the scene and makes it interesting. You're like, oh my gosh, he started singing. And sometimes that might happen if you have like a pianist. It's a funny word. Pianist in the back. Maybe there are drums on an improv show. They might have that. Not all do. You can still burst out in song without them. But that's a tactic that I found interesting. You don't need to be a trained singer to be a musical improv. You just need to be a good improviser and know those rules. So we're going to switch spots to one of my favorite spots here in the Second City, and I'm going to tell you about some tea real quick. Okay, I will say that the rest of this video is kind of like, I want to say tea for what happened in improv class. Majority of everything that I learned was in that first half of the video. Right now, we're just kind of chilling. I wanted to experiment with actors' notes. The first half of the video can be about just what I wanted you guys to take away. And the second half is we're kind of just chilling. And I appreciate you guys for watching. Stick around. I'm saying this like it's alive, but I wanted to talk to you about, I don't know, there's this girl in my class and she's kind of cute. Sorry. She's kind of cute, but we did the scene. It was the musical improv scene where she stood up and like those 10 seconds she stood up there and we needed another volunteer. Nobody went up, so I said, I got to be a good improviser, and I went up with her. We were two teenagers. And we were at prom. We started the scene off as, a nervous couple. And then I landed on the line, please dance with me. She was already my date to prom, but still, so much you can discover in a scene. I said, please dance with me. And then the musical improv teacher said, stop. That's your line. I want you to sing it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he started playing the music, and that was the moment I was referring to beforehand about as soon as he hit a key and played a verse and a melody, I started already moving and I started singing. And that's when my other instructor said, listen, Gio, breathe. Listen to the song. And I think that's a beautiful, I know this is like tea with Gio right now, but I think that's another beautiful thing. In improv, one of the greatest skills you can ever do, if you ever want, I think this might be the number one skill an improviser has, is listening. It's so simple. It's so simple. I know. I thought I was a good listener, but I didn't realize after doing improv how much energy that you have to put into it, like active listening. Like, you may have heard that I was having a good day if you asked me, how was your day? And I said, I had a great day. Or, I had a great day, yeah. See, like, there are things, there's subtext, meaning that there's something that I'm thinking as I'm saying I'm having a great day. Okay, what are you thinking? Maybe you're not having a great day and you're just saying that to be nice. And so, oh gosh, I know I rambled too far. I need to pull myself back to what I was trying to say. Yeah, I wasn't listening, not just to my scene partner. Well, I was listening to my scene partner, but I wasn't listening to the music. And that music can also give you so much information about the melody. Is it fast paced? Is it slow? Do you want to play this romantic as you sing this? I wasn't on beat at all. He started playing a rhythm that was like La La Land. And I was like, or I was like, please dance with me. And then I was like off tempo terribly. And he said, say it again. You're going to keep repeating this. I was like, oh no, please dance with me. And I was very uncomfortable. But what I love, and I'm going to harp on it, a good improviser will always support. She started moving with me like, oh yeah, I will dance with you. And it was funny. I think it was an impulse to reach my hand out. I was like, please dance with me. And then she grabbed it. Oh, she's cute. And she grabbed my hand. Anyways, I was in the middle of the scene. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to pull. I did a twirl. We started dancing. And then the musical instructor said, okay, stop, continue on. So meaning stop singing and continue on the scene. And she said, I would, but maybe after you take a breath mint. Like, this is part of the scene, or maybe it's not, and she's just asking me to take breath mint. I only had chicken, rice, and broccoli for lunch. Or, I mean, I had an avocado. I hope my breath didn't smell bad. But we continued on the scene, and it turned almost into, not like a breakup, but she said she didn't want to take me. She wanted to take my brother, John. And she's more interested in math geeks, not jocks or whatever. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take your sister. I don't even care. And it turns into this almost breakup kind of way. But that was interesting. We just discovered a scene. She also sang. I think her line was, I'm not interested, which kind of hurt. She just kept on repeating, I'm not interested, I'm not interested. And I was like, I got the message. But that was funny because right after we finished that game, we did halftime. I call it halftime. Basically, it's 10 to 15 minutes in between this 3-hour improv class. So after an hour and a half goes by, we have 10 to 15 minutes. I went to the bathroom, I had mouthwash, and I mouthwashed. So I came back to class and I knew, it was so minty. I kind of looked at her and she looked at me, and when you can speak to somebody with your eyes, it's easy to tell. And she was like right next to me as we were playing the next improv game. We were standing in a circle. It was a group game. And then it was like, did you just brush your teeth or something? Chew gum? Because it's strong. And I was like, kind of looked away. So I'm gonna leave you guys with that. I want to make sure you guys kept those notes, and I appreciate you guys staying for this long. And I do really want to reiterate that you don't need to be a trained singer to be in musical improv. Again, a good improviser will always support, whether that's even before you begin a scene. Don't leave your fellow improviser just hanging there. And during the scene, always support what they say. Say yes and continue on and listen. And last but not least, I know a lot of this can feel scary, and maybe it's not scary for you. Maybe you're just so pumped up with energy that your heart starts beating, but it takes you out of the moment to where you can't listen. And even in those cases, like, I'm having fun, but I'm still, in my own head about trying to be funny or having preconceived ideas, which is not the point of improv. It's to react and listen, just as actors do. That's why it's called improv for actors. And to always remind yourself, whether you're feeling nervous, scared, excited, remind yourself to breathe. Just remind yourself to breathe. This has been week 3 of Improv for Actors Notes. Yeah, week 3 of Improv for Actors 2, and we still have 4 more weeks to go. And I just heard that we're going to perform a show at the end of this. I don't know who's going to be there, but we're performing a show. I might sing on stage. I don't know. This is going to be so new to me. But as an improviser, you take what life gives you. You take what life gives you, and you yes and it, and see what you can discover. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and in case no one has told you today, I love you. You matter. I'm trying to say my outro here. I love you. You matter. You have value. And let me say something I haven't said before. I know I haven't said this before in my past YouTube videos or podcasts, but I'm really just going to say this again, even though I said it in the video. Please, breathe. You don't need to speed run through your scenes. You don't need to have a lot to talk about in your scenes, or maybe in life. You know, it's risky to take action to, I don't know, tell your crush that you like her or something like that. But there are moments, and often for me, just to remind yourself to breathe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.